With a flare of exasperated self-assuredness, Crowley made his entrance into the room. His jacket and shirt, bearing the marks of turmoil, were discarded with an almost cavalier sweep. With a graceful pivot, he descended upon a lounge chair, his lithe form seeming to meld into it. Sarcasm and amusement dripped from his words like honey, his voice a symphony of wryness as he drawled, "Well, that went swimmingly." Aziraphale followed in his wake, a touch more cautious in his approach. "Indeed," he began, his words tinged with a hint of hesitation, "I suppose one could argue that the situation might have enjoyed a more seamless resolution." His voice wavered slightly, and a blush of embarrassment crept upon his face as he sought solace in his twisting hands. "You needn't have surrendered the key. I would have managed perfectly well." Despite his reservations, he couldn't help but profess the nagging suspicion that had seeped into his celestial soul that evening. "But did you, perchance, orchestrate it this way, intentionally?" He cleared his throat as if trying to physically remove the weight of shame that clung to him. Crowley interjected with unwavering resolve, "Of course not." His forceful denial washed over Aziraphale like a soothing balm, banishing the inner demons of doubt that had plagued him. The weight of their shared history and sincerity in Crowley's voice were undeniable. "You know I'd never align myself with them, Angel. The real challenge was liberating the key from the museum, and that task, my dear, has been accomplished." Aziraphale let out a relieved sigh, grateful for the demonic absolution that washed over him, in response to his confession. With fingertips lightly touching his temples, he let his mind roam, sensing their surroundings. "It appears, at least for now, our infernal pursuers have decided to spare us this particular chase," he remarked, his response tinged with a hint of unease. His gaze no longer fixated on his hands, darted around as if searching for stable ground, any spot where his eyes wouldn't inadvertently settle upon Crowley's partially undressed form. Detecting Aziraphale's discomfort like a sixth sense, Crowley locked his mischievous eyes on him, his lips curving into a subtle, knowing smirk. He recognized that peculiar mixture of intrigue and resistance within the angel's gaze, an attempt to resist an allure that lay before him. In the wake of that evening's unsettling events, the once seemingly impregnable barriers had crumbled like ancient ruins, and the serpentine essence of the demon stirred, rousing from its slumber. He found himself powerless to contain the emotions surging within him as the unraveling defenses, once suppressing his impulses, rekindled the smoldering fire of his true self. He lowered his glasses with a deliberate slowness, his gaze laden with an unspoken message. A surge of exhilaration coursed through Crowley, an irresistible temptation to tease. Aziraphale continued his train of thought, "One could even venture to suggest that we find ourselves in a state of relative safety. Perhaps it's best if we return to the bookshop now and update Muriel. I must revisit Matthias's scroll of Indus, inspect if there's anything further." His words met an abrupt halt as Crowley, with a graceful flourish, dropped his glasses aside and rose from his seat, gliding effortlessly to intercept the sentence that was emerging. He prowled towards Aziraphale, his every step imbued with a devil-may-care nonchalance. "Indeed," Crowley agreed softly, a suggestive lilt woven into his words, "whatever you need, my angel." The word "need" hung in the air, laden with a layered implication, as Crowley took Aziraphale's hand and guided it, with a gentle yet purposeful touch, to his exposed chest. Aziraphale's hand, almost as if spooked by the bold move, darted back to his own shoulder. Crowley slid his fingers beneath Aziraphale's retracted touch, as if a key had finally discovered its home in a long-forgotten lock, enfolding Aziraphale's shy fingers within his own in an almost reverent caress. In a graceful sway of circuitous elegance, he drew nearer, his other hand gently encircling Aziraphale's waist, creating a silhouette reminiscent of a dancer's embrace. A fragile pause held the space between them, a silence filled with unspoken questions and untamed tensions. "Crowley, this is silly," Aziraphale eventually ventured, his voice a nervous lifeline breaking the silence. Crowley, undeterred by the awkwardness, maintained his stance, as if lending weight to the suspended question hanging in the air. Aziraphale struggled within himself, caught in a crosscurrent of emotions, each one vying for expression. His mouth moved soundlessly, a silent jumble of choices, while his gaze remained tethered to his hand, nestled in Crowley's grip. After an extended pause, Aziraphale's posture appeared to ease, his lips settling into a tentative, shy smile. As Aziraphale's gaze met Crowley's, he caught a glimmer of triumph flickering within those eyes. With an effortless grace, Crowley proceeded to unburden Aziraphale of his jacket, meticulously observing every nuance of reaction. A soft sigh of contentment escaped Aziraphale as his jacket slipped away, Crowley's smirk deepening in mirrored satisfaction. Having gently placed Aziraphale's jacket aside, he turned his attention to Aziraphale's bow tie, his fingers a rhythmic dance upon the silk fabric. The demon could feel the subtle longing in Aziraphale's movements, a quiet desire for more intimacy, mingled with apprehension. He relished every moment of this intricate dance of temptation, the tantalizing game they played. Crowley released Aziraphale's top shirt fastening, before trailing his fingertips down the placket of his shirt in a deliberate and measured gesture. As Aziraphale pushed into his touch, Crowley couldn't help but smile, his eyes alight with a hint of devilish charm. He could sense the angel's yearning, the almost imperceptible tremor in his breath, as Aziraphale poised himself in eager anticipation, as though prepared to embrace the tender touch of their lips, the warm connection that seemed so close and yet remained just out of reach. But Crowley held back, his movements refrained with artful finesse. He wanted to draw this moment out, savor the delicious tension that hung in the air between them that was far more intoxicating than the surrender. Their breaths whispered close, a steady rhythm mirroring the languid tempo of the unfolding scene. Button by button, Crowley navigated Aziraphale's waistcoat, a deliberate exploration of each fastening that lent an air of charged intimacy to the moment. On the final button, a soft gasp from Aziraphale punctuated the proceedings, an amalgamation of trepidation and yearning. Crowley paused, his inquisitive gaze meeting Aziraphale's, the demonic impulse to tease momentarily supplanted by a surge of genuine affection. Aziraphale responded with a softly encouraging smile, a shy offering that served as the unspoken answer to Crowley's silent query, an eloquent, quiet affirmation. Crowley took solace in Aziraphale's response, yet there was an unspoken challenge met in that moment, a threshold crossed. He proceeded to slide Aziraphale's waistcoat from his form to join the jacket on the sidelines, but rather than continuing to remove the shirt, as Aziraphale might have anticipated, Crowley chose a different path. With a deliberate slowness, he leaned in, his arms slipping beneath Aziraphale's, wrapping around him in an embrace that radiated tenderness and a fierce protectiveness. It was as if, in that intimate moment, Crowley sought to shield not only Aziraphale's body but his very soul from the complexities of their world. Their bodies entwined in a merging of warmth and exposed vulnerability. Heads found solace on each other's shoulders, and in that gentle embrace, their heartbeats blended into a harmonious cadence, a silent symphony of unity. Time, in that stolen moment, seemed to stretch, carrying with it the weight of all the unspoken words they had shared over the centuries. The delicate facade of restraint that had long masked the angel's vulnerability seemed to shatter like fragile glass as Aziraphale's silent tears trickled down Crowley's shoulder. Crowley's arms, far from confining, tightened with a fierce yet gentle resolve, a commitment to collect Aziraphale's fragile fragments and cradle them close, a silent promise that they would navigate this uncharted territory together. In the wake of that emotional relief, a pause settled between them. It was a pause that spoke volumes of the significance of the moment, the breaking of barriers and the emergence of something profound. With their embrace softened, their connection remained unbroken as they traced delicate patterns along each other's backs, as if exploring the depths of each other's souls. In that sacred silence, they found a sanctuary within each other's arms, a place where vulnerability was cherished, promises were unspoken, and the boundaries of heaven and hell melted into insignificance. When Crowley finally relinquished his hold, his hands cradled Aziraphale's face with a gentleness that bordered on reverence. With a tenderness that conveyed unspoken devotion, he swept away the tracks of tears that marked Aziraphale's cheeks, each touch an implicit vow that he would be there to catch every tear, to erase every sorrow, and to stand as an unwavering pillar of support. With meticulous care, Crowley repositioned the waistcoat, his attention descended as his nimble fingers rethreaded the buttons. He then offered the jacket, a delicate choreography as Aziraphale extended an arm, slipping gracefully into the first sleeve of the jacket, and then pivoted to insert the other. Yet, just as Aziraphale was about to complete the motion, Crowley's arms enveloped him from behind in a cocooning embrace that drew him close once more. Crowley's lips grazed Aziraphale's ear, his voice a deep, reassuring rumble as he whispered, "Are you all right, my angel?" Aziraphale turned, a radiant smile illuminating his face as he met Crowley's eyes. "Perfectly," he breathed, his trembling fingers expertly retying his bow. Retrieving his own damaged shirt and jacket, Crowley performed a deft motion that restored them to their original, impeccable state. Stepping with a fluid grace, he positioned himself ahead of Aziraphale, his strides purposeful as he approached the hallway. In swift succession, he redressed himself, his attire returning to its former elegance as he reached the doorway. "Well then, shall we?" Crowley's words carried an air of mock formality. "We'd better get going and look at this scroll again then, Angel," his tone a blend of amusement and invitation. Holding the door open with an ironic flourish, he gestured for Aziraphale to proceed. Snapped from his reverie by the gesture, Aziraphale stepped forward with renewed determination.